Hi everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use the type tool and then you can watch the next video which is going to show you how to do the name project. So to find the type tool, it's going to be on your toolbar right here on the right hand side, and it's going to be, oh my gosh, right hand side. Left hand side, this is with the letter T. That's going to be your type tool. You can also press the letter T on your keyboard if you like using the key commands to get to this tool. So if I click on my letter T here, I now have my tool selected. If you look up at the top, you have the option for your fonts. So if you click this down arrow, you have all these available options for you. If you're looking for certain ones, as you can see up here, there's different styles selected for you to see. So you got the black letter, which is a display font, calligraphy, comic. Let's see, it looks like you can scroll. So these are like different languages. This is the one I want to go through. So everything over here is selected. So you have your sans serif, your script, serif. So if you're looking only for a certain kind, like if you want to use a sans serif, you can unselect. That's all of them. I want to unselect all of them, and I'm just going to select my sans serif. So it just gives me all the sans serif options. If I'm looking for just a serif option, I'm just going to scroll down and click on my serif option. Remember, serif has a stroke, sans serif doesn't. And then, of course, all the other options are available to you. So I'm going to click them all on. So I have all my options. And I'm going to do this fun one, which is just like a cursive one. So in order to type within this document, all you need to do is click. And then it's going to give you a little dot with your cursor blinking. Up at the top here, you can change the size by, you could either type into it or you can press this down arrow here. So you can just slide it, but I always just like typing it in. So I'm going to type, let's try that again. Delete. Okay, so I'm just going to click and I'm going to say the type tool. Okay, and as you can see in your layers panel, it creates a whole new layer for you, so you don't have to go and create a new layer every time you want to type a word. One thing I am going to say is that there is no spell check within Photopea, or even if you're using Photoshop. So you want to be aware and double check your spelling every time you are using the type tool. So some other things that are available to you, if you want to change the color of your font, I'm going to highlight it. And up here, there's a black square. It might be hard to see, but this is where your color picker is, so you can change the color of your font. So maybe I want to make it like this magenta color. I can click OK. If I want to change the look, like if I want to make it bold, usually the option will be here, but this font in particular does not give you that option. So unfortunately, I don't have that option to make it a bold or anything like that. If I want to make it bigger, I can type in a bigger number. Let's see how big 200 is going to be. And I can also warp my font. So if I wanted to have a bend or a curve, I would click on the word warp, and then right where it says none, you would click on that, and then you have all these different options of what you want your font to do. So maybe I want to make it like a fisheye. I'm going to move this out of the way so you can see what's going on with my type here. And I can play around with the bends of my words here. I can play around with the horizontal distribution or the vertical distribution. So you have a lot to play around with, and I would definitely highly recommend seeing which ones that you prefer. Okay, and just kind of play around with the toggles that are offered to you. So I didn't like any of them, so I'm not really going to play around with that. When you are 100% done playing around with your fonts, the color, and everything like that, before you click anywhere else, you want to click this check mark. That means that you're telling the program that you're done typing and you want to move on to do something else. To move your type after you click on the check mark, you want to go to the move tool, of course, just like any other layer, and then you can click and move it around. You can free transform it. So if you do Control T, you can still form a box around it. and you can click and drag from the corners. Holding shift is still going to keep it proportionate, but if you want to make it disproportionate, you can click the bottom and stretch it out, or make it squished. Totally up to you, but I don't want to do that. So let's see. There is a character option here, so you have another menu, and some of it is repeating. So you have your size, you have your font, the regular for, if I was able to bold it or not. If I was typing more of a body of text, remember leading is playing with the spacing in between the lines of your text. That is an option. I don't know what these ones are. Scale vertically, scale horizontally. I don't usually touch those. But over here, you actually do have buttons, and I wonder if it's going to work for this font, for like bold, italic, make it all caps, lower caps, like it's still caps, but they're like smaller. And you have the underline and a strike through. So let's see, I'm going to go back to my type tool. If I want to reselect my type that I already have on my document, notice how I have the black arrow, and once I put my cursor over top of the words, it changes to the type tool. So that's when you can click. Whoops, see, I created a new layer. So if you don't select it correctly, you're going to select a new layer. So I'm going to delete that layer. I'm going to try again. I'm going to click. So now I selected that, and now I can highlight. Let's see. Let's see what that did. Doesn't really look like it did much. I'm going to do it again. See the change. Okay, maybe it did. Made it a little bit thicker. Spacing's a little bit different. All right, but then I already have it all typed in capital letters, but you can play around with these buttons as well. It's not really going to change because I typed in all capital letters, so my fault. Okay, so I showed you the warp. I showed you all these buttons. The other thing that you can do, because with my background there is some sort of texture to it, and I want to make my font come forward more, is that if you double click on your layer, you're going to get the layer styles. And we talked about this a while ago. So if I want to make my bevel and emboss for my type font, and you want to select this layer here, see how it's a darker gray, you want to actually click on the words, and then you have the option to play around with all these toggles here of how much of a bevel you would like to have on your font. And of course it's changing, as you can see over here on the side. Ooh, don't like what that did. I'm gonna bring that back. If you want to add a texture to your words, you can go to pattern overlay. Now they don't give you much options, so I actually kind of downloaded some options in here, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. But they give you some of these simple options here. They're okay. I mean, if you like them, use them. If not, don't use them. But if you want more options, what I'm going to do is I'm downloading these textures that Photoshop actually gives, and I'm going to upload them onto Google Classroom so you're able to download it. So it's not going to be under the assignment, but you'll see another attachment in Google Classroom that's going to provide all these different presets of patterns that you can use to apply to your type. So once you select the pattern, you can then play around with the blend mode. So in order for me to see the pattern and the color that I selected underneath, I chose overlay, and I could play around with the opacity of how much of this texture I want to show through. So I can zoom in so you can see this better. So you can see that my font has that texture over top of it, but it's still having that magenta color that I had. If I didn't do the overlay, let's say I did normal, there you go. It turns back more into the actual color that you see here. But I'm going to go back to my overlay. You can play with the other ones. You can play around with the scale of the texture, so I can make it larger, or I can make it really smaller. Okay, the smaller, you can't really see the texture, but I'm going to make it out there. That looks cool. All right, and then once you're done playing with your layer styles, like you can do an inner shadow. Okay, you can play around with the opacity, play around with the distance of where it is on your font. You have a drop shadow. I use drop shadow more often than I use inner shadow. You can play around with the distance with that. You can see that it's kind of hovering, so it's kind of making it look 3D. That's popping forward. So you have all these options available to you, so you can be creative with how you want your project to look. Click OK. So one thing that I want to point out, I'm going to zoom out now, is that if I wanted to rearrange my words here, like I wanted the, and then type, and then tool, I would have to put them on different layers. So I'm going to do that right now so you can see that option. So I'm just going to click the, okay, I'm going to click the check mark. I'm going to go back to, I'm on the type tool. Type, tool, and now I'm able to click on my move tool, and I can move these words wherever I want them to go. So if I want to click on my type word, I have more control of the placement and how far apart these words are. So usually when I use the type tool and I'm only using like, you know, small, not a body of text, let me put it that way. I usually kind of put them all on their own layer so I can play around with the placement of them much better. And also too, I can leave these normal, you know, straight, but if I go to the type tool and I want to warp it, I have to go to my type tool here, highlight it, go to warp. This is the only word that's going to warp. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Hold on. Warp, 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 fisheye. Okay, make sure you click OK so it stays. And this is the only one that's going to move. And that looks awful because I can't read it. So whatever you do to your words, also make sure that, you know, they're legible. That's the purpose of using the type tool, is to communicate an actual message. All right, so for the next project, we are going to be doing something with our name. So tune in for the next video to find out how to complete the assignment.